She's just fine. I can take you home.
Let me go, you're hurting me. Me too.
Listen, I can make you rich.
Frank Moses, a retired Black Ops agent, spends his quiet days working out, caring for his avocado plant, and staying out of trouble. Despite getting his pension regularly, he still calls the pension office to chat with a woman named Sarah Ross. He pretends his check hasn't arrived.
Hey, Frank, what's going on?
Then rips it up just to keep talking to her. Their conversations have become routine, with Sarah even asking about his plant.
Life or death. I'm not kidding.
She dreams of adventure and travel, but their chat ends when her boss notices. One day, Frank realizes his house lacks Christmas decorations.
Hi, Mr. Moses.
So he puts them up. A month later, he receives another check and uses it as an excuse to call Sarah. He mentions he'll be in Kansas City and they toy with meeting up. That night, while he sleeps, a hit squad breaks into his house. Frank, appearing oblivious, heads downstairs, only to take out the entire team effortlessly. Hearing a call for backup, he heats bullets in a frying pan and retrieves his weapon stash. The bullets start going off, causing chaos. After the attackers unleash gunfire and a grenade blast. Assuming he's dead, Frank takes them out one by one and escapes to Kansas City. Meanwhile, Sarah returns from a date and finds Frank in her apartment, startling her.
The avocado?
She attacks him before realizing he's already packed her things. He insists they're in danger, but she doesn't believe him. When men arrive outside, Frank grabs Sarah and takes off, gagging and tying her up in the back of his car for her safety.
Hope to meet you for the first time.
He reassures her they'll laugh about this later, but she's not convinced. Elsewhere, CIA agent William Cooper plants evidence at a crime scene before executing a target.
Who I am?
Of course I do.
His boss, Cynthia Wilkes, assigns him to eliminate Frank Moses. Frank, meanwhile, leaves Sarah at a motel and visits his old CIA handler, Joe, at a retirement home. Joe inspects severed fingers Frank brought from the hit squad and identifies them as South African mercenaries.
What's up?
The same group recently killed a journalist in New York. Frank starts wondering why someone wants him dead now. Back at the motel, Sarah frees herself and calls 911, but William intercepts the call and sends cops to pick her up.
She's just fine.
When an officer forces her into a car and tries to drug her, Frank intervenes, taking out the cop and rescuing Sarah. As they flee, William catches up and crashes into them. Frank, unfazed, steps out of their spinning car, fires at William, and forces him to retreat. Before William can recover, police surround him. Frank called them on him. Meanwhile, Joe gets a surprise visit from an intruder. Frank and Sarah reach New York, where she, though still doubtful, thanks him for saving her. They visit the mother of the murdered journalist and discover a library book containing a list of names, all dead except one. Pilot Gabriel Singer. Frank calls Joe and learns his retirement home has turned into a crime scene. In Langley, William realizes Frank's file is heavily redacted and learns he was once a hero before being labeled red, retired, extremely dangerous.
You gotta be kidding me.
Frank tracks down his old paranoid friend Marvin, who's been hiding in a bunker. Marvin finds a file revealing that everyone on the list was tied to a 1981 village massacre and its cover-up, except Gabriel Singer.
They switch the flip, and you're done.
Marvin memorizes a helicopter's registration number before they head to Alabama to find Singer. When they meet, Singer panics upon hearing about the 1981 mission. He reveals he flew a CIA agent back to retrieve someone, but didn't share the details with the journalist. Suddenly, gunfire erupts, killing Singer. William orchestrated the ambush. Marvin pulls out the pig, his grenade launcher, and takes out an enemy sniper. Another hitwoman fires a rocket, forcing them to flee. Marvin, ever dramatic, duels her, shooting her rocket midair, taking her out in the explosion. Realizing they need more help, They seek Ivan Semenov, a retired Russian agent. Marvin hesitates. His last encounter with Ivan involved torture. Frank convinces Ivan, who, missing his old life, agrees to assist.
With Johnson.
You're adopted.
Disguised as a general, Frank infiltrates CIA headquarters with Sarah posing as a scientist. When she loses a contact lens required for the biometric scanner, security steps in, but she charms them into helping her.
I'll find it.
Meanwhile, Frank retrieves a classified file, confirming William's relentless pursuit. Testing the theory, Frank confronts William in his office, sparking an intense brawl between the two. Frank pins William down hard, but William puts up a good fight. Still, Frank easily overpowers him, twisting his arm out of place before smugly letting him know that he trained the guy who trained him. William scrambles for his gun, but Frank slams a filing cabinet on him and makes his getaway. Wasting no time, William sounds the alarm, putting the whole agency on high alert. Meanwhile, Frank finds Sarah in the break room. He quickly gathers supplies from a janitor's closet and whips up a homemade explosive. The blast creates just the distraction he needs. Sarah helps by drawing a firefighter's attention, giving Frank the perfect chance to swipe the guy's uniform and blend in. Disguised, he slips out unnoticed and heads straight for Marvin, who's waiting in an ambulance. But just as he arrives, Joe steps out to meet them. Joe then drops a bombshell. Turns out, the assassin sent after him didn't make it. Joe took care of business himself. Back at the agency, Cynthia storms in to find William beaten and bruised. She's not happy. Scolding him for letting an old man take him down, she orders him to pull himself together, find Frank, and finish the job.
Want a vest?
Meanwhile, Frank decides they need some backup. The team makes their way to an upscale manor, where Frank goes in alone. Inside, he comes face to face with Victoria Winslow, a legendary retired assassin. Frank assures her he's not here for a fight. Victoria, unfazed, casually reveals a machine gun, making it clear she was ready if he was. The rest of the crew joins him, and Joe greets Victoria with a kiss. She patches up Frank's wounds and admits she still takes on occasional jobs just to satisfy her itch for action. Talk turns to Sarah, and Frank confesses she makes him believe a normal life might be possible. They all go over the Guatemala file and realize everyone involved is dead, except for Frank and Marvin. However, the journalist who compiled the list had one extra name, Alexander Dunning, a former arms dealer turned defense contractor. Frank decides it's time to pay him a visit, and Victoria insists on tagging along. William, recovering at home, gets a call from Cynthia. She's got intel on Frank's next target, Dunning. Over at Dunning's heavily guarded estate, Victoria scouts the perimeter while Frank, Marvin, and Joe roll up, disguised as an African warlord and his entourage. While waiting, Sarah and Victoria bond. Sort of. Victoria bluntly warns Sarah that if she breaks Frank's heart, she'll personally take care of her. In return, Sarah shares how she and Frank met. Victoria reminisces about a past love, a man she had to kill because duty called. Without hesitation, she shot him 3 times. Inside, Dunning tricks the FBI agents monitoring him by playing a fake recording before leading Joe into a secure room, leaving Frank and Marvin outside with his guards. When the doorbell rings, Frank wastes no time and knocks Dunning out cold. He wakes up tied to a chair, confused. Frank and Marvin refresh his memory. Back in '81, they were sent to Guatemala to clean up his mess. They demand to know who he flew out of the country, but Dunning refuses to spill. That is, until they pull out some torture tools. Panicked, Dunning confesses the orders came from Robert Stanton, a former Army lieutenant turned vice president. Stanton is eliminating loose and to hide the massacre of innocent villagers in Guatemala, a dark past that could ruin his bid for the presidency. Before they can process this, Dunning's recording system fails, tipping off the FBI. Victoria warns the team that agents are moving in fast, and William himself arrives to lead the charge. Dunning offers to negotiate, but Joe knocks him out cold. William calls Frank, trying to talk him down, but Frank tells him the VP has been ordering assassinations to cover up his crimes. William isn't convinced. With the house completely surrounded, Joe makes a tough call. Someone has to buy time for the others. He says his goodbyes and steps outside, drawing fire immediately. Frank and Marvin escape through the back, while Victoria provides cover. In the chaos, Sarah trips and gets captured. Regrouping, Frank learns Sarah was taken just as Ivan, an old ally with a soft spot for Victoria, arrives to help. They retreat to a safe house, raising a toast in Joe's memory. As they plan their next move, Marvin goes on a rant about the torture Sarah might be enduring, pushing Frank to storm off. Ivan follows him, sharing a story about how Victoria shot him 3 times but spared his life, proof she still loved him. He reminds Frank that love makes people do crazy things. Together, they'll get Sarah back. Meanwhile, Sarah is being interrogated, with William listening in. Frank calls William, speaking from experience. He used to be just like William, driven, ambitious. But time changes perspective. The things you love can be taken in an instant. While they talk, another FBI agent traces the call's location. William is stunned. Frank is in his house. Rushing home, he finds a file left behind, listing names tied to the Guatemala incident. He realizes Frank isn't bluffing. With new doubts, he returns to Sarah, telling her Frank is on the verge of crossing a line. He needs her help to stop him, but Sarah just smirks, confident Frank will outplay him. Meanwhile, William figures out someone inside the FBI is pulling strings and demands to be put on the VP's security detail. The team gears up for their next move. VP Stanton is hosting a fundraiser, and they plan to crash the party. Marvin sneaks in as a chef, Victoria waltzes in as a guest, and Ivan gets cozy with Cynthia on the dance floor, reminiscing about old times. As chaos erupts inside, thanks to gas fumes and locked doors, agents rush to get Stanton out through a back exit. But outside, they run straight into Victoria, who unleashes a storm of bullets with a mounted machine gun. Agents scramble, Stanton's security detail falls apart, and a backup limo arrives, only for Ivan to blow it up. William rushes in with reinforcements, only to realize the machine gun was a decoy. He retreats with Stanton, but Victoria and Marvin pin him down again. In the crossfire, Victoria gets hit, and Marvin smokes out their position to escape. Stanton and 2 agents manage to flee the building, only to be greeted by Marvin, wearing a bomb vest. He charges at them, sending them sprinting for their lives. Just when they think they're safe, another limo arrives. Stanton jumps in, but William, realizing something is off, tries to stop him. Stanton orders the driver to floor it. William clings to the car, but is thrown off, just as Frank takes out the agents and tases Stanton. When Stanton wakes up, Frank lets him know the jig is up. Terrified, Stanton assumes he's about to die, but Frank has other plans. He calls William, giving him 15 minutes to bring Sarah, or Stanton gets a bullet. William arrives to find Frank holding Stanton at gunpoint, right as Cynthia shows up with Sarah. But there's another surprise, Dunning. Turns out, it wasn't just Stanton. Dunning and Cynthia were the real masterminds behind the assassinations. Before Stanton can process this, Dunning shoots him dead. Dunning then tries to leverage Sarah for Frank's surrender. Frank drops his weapon, and William cuffs him, but subtly slips the key into Frank's palm. In a sudden turn, William shoots Cynthia, and Frank takes down Dunning's guards. Just then, Victoria, Marvin, and Ivan reveal themselves, having already cleared the rest of the area. With the battle won, William leaves the cleanup to the FBI. As they drive away, Ivan calls in a favor from Frank. Cut to Frank and Marvin, now on the run with a stolen nuclear device, the entire Moldovan army hot on their heels. That's all. Thank you so much for watching.